Six tournaments. Badgers found out yesterday that they would be the number 3 seed in the East region and face 14th seeded Montana on Thursday in Denver. Many had the Badgers pegged as a number 3 seed, but also had them playing in Milwaukee. It was a disappointment, but Coach Greg Gard said it doesn't really matter in the long run.
You just go wherever they send you, right? I don't know what goes on in those rooms and their logic or reasoning, or, obviously there's a lot of other moving parts to it. Obviously a really good seed is a 3, and that's a credit to our guys and the 26 wins that they put together. And obviously, as I've always said, bad teams are all in spring break, so we'll get ready for Montana and get out to Denver on Tuesday and be ready to go on Thursday.
Montana comes in having won 14 of the last 15 games, including the Big Sky Conference Tournament title. Leading scorer, Money Williams, 13.8 points per game. He comes off the bench, while guard Joe Pridgeon was a first-team All-Conference pick and leads the Grizzlies in rebounding. Again, it'll be Wisconsin and Montana on Thursday in Denver. Tip is set for 12:30. Meanwhile, Marquette also in the tournament, earning a number 7 seed. They will play in Cleveland against 10-seeded New Mexico on Friday night.
Rural Mutual Insurance, keeping Wisconsin strong.
Farmers deal with a lot of days, stress, and fatigue. This is your reminder to take breaks by keeping yourself healthy. Visit ruralmutual.com to learn how Rural Mutual supports Wisconsin farmers and prioritize safety on the farm.
Rural Mutual Insurance, keeping Wisconsin strong.
Well, the Bucks are headed out west today. It's really going to open up a 5-game road trip tomorrow against the Warriors in San Francisco. Other stops on the journey include in LA to face the Lakers, Sacramento, Phoenix, and Denver. Just 15 games left in the regular season. With this Wisconsin Sports Zone Network update, I'm Zach Heil.
It rolls out. The door is open for Michigan State. 3 seconds. Fouls. No call. He got fouled. It's over. Wisconsin has done it. Wow. They're going back to the Big Ten Tournament Championship game. And that's it. Michigan wins the Big Ten Tournament. Let the dancing begin.
Need to draw a few more fouls and or knock down some more shots, and we had a chance to get some wide open looks. If you're going to win a championship, you got to make a play, and part of making a play is knocking down a shot and take that.
This is where Wisconsin gathers to talk sports. Packers, Brewers, Badgers, Bucks. The Wisco Sports Show is on the air. Now, here's your host, Grant Bills.
When I was making the intro this afternoon, I want to include a highlight from that Michigan State game on Saturday, because the last time we talked was on Friday night, and Wisconsin had just beaten UCLA. And over the weekend, we were treated to 2 absolute awesome Big Ten basketball games. Wisconsin beating Michigan State on Saturday. And I think most would say, and you'd be correct in saying Saturday's game was a little bit prettier. A little bit better shot making on display, probably a little bit better individual playmaking and creation, just a more aesthetically pleasing basketball game on Saturday. But Sunday and Saturday, both very hard fought competitive Big Ten games. And I want to make sure we talk at least a little bit about that Michigan State game. I don't just want to skip past that just because that's how the games fell and that's how the schedule felt. Just because we didn't have a Wisco Sports Show on Saturday night or Sunday morning, I don't want to let that game go by the wayside. That was a tremendous game, one of my favorite Badger games in a while. So that game taking place on Saturday and then coming up short yesterday against Michigan. Obviously, the focus is going to be a little bit more on yesterday because that was the championship game and the game that's most recent. But I wanted to throw that Michigan State, the closing seconds, that highlight. I wanted to throw that in at the end, that play from John Tonje, because I don't just want to skip past that. That was a tremendous, tremendous win and a signature win, and one that probably helped Wisconsin's resume a little bit. I know it's an object of debate, how much these conference tournaments, specifically the Big Ten tournament, how much it impacts seeding and where some of these teams were placed around the country, something that we can get into tonight. But my point, as I struggle to efficiently begin the show, I don't want to skip past Saturday's game because that was really fun. I want to make sure that's a part of tonight's show and our Badgers conversations as well. It's the Wisco Sports Show. My name is Grant Bills. I'm broadcasting live here at the studio Le Michaels today, Bill Michaels studio, because I got to go to Chicago tonight because I will be out the rest of the week, and I am sorry about that. It's not even a vacation, although I'm not going to complain about going to Mexico. which is where we're going, somewhere outside Cancun. It's a wedding. It's a destination wedding. A good friend. What am I supposed to do? Not go? Like, yeah, it's an important day for you guys. The day that you commit yourselves to each other and start your life together, and you want all your friends and family there. So I can't go. March Madness. I got to be on the air to take calls from Tony in Texas and Thomas in La Crosse. All right, can't go. Send a gift. I can't do that. I got to go. So I apologize about being off the rest of the week. Them's the breaks. I'm also not going to complain about getting to go to Mexico as it's all of a sudden a little bit colder and we got some snow this weekend, at least in this portion of the state. So this will be the last time we get to talk this week. And I'm sorry, can't take phone calls, but I will be hyper attentive to your texts and your comments on the live stream, 608-321-1670. And the stream is up and running. As you can see, I am here in Bill's studio, the Point Brewing sign behind me, the on-air sign of the Bill Michaels Show behind me. So I'll take your comments and your texts. Sorry, I can't take your phone calls, but hopefully we can still interact and share some takes and react to the weekend. I want to get right into it, Badgers basketball, and we'll talk about the bracket and get into what comes next. But I do want to talk about the weekend. I thought Saturday was tremendous. It was a pleasure to watch John Tonje do his thing. And as we talked about on Friday, like a little bit of a sigh of relief on Friday watching Tonje score as well and as effectively as he did. And then that continued into Saturday too, but it really started on Friday with that UCLA game. It's not that I didn't think John Tonje was good anymore. It's not like, but he was white hot for this stretch in February. He had gone, 3 games over 30 points, culminating in that performance against Illinois. And I was at the Kohl's Center for that with Zach, and he was looking up all of the Badgers to accomplish a stretch like that before. And it was peak Tonje a couple of weeks ago. And then, from the Oregon game to the Penn State game to the Minnesota game, it never really got white hot for Tonje, and he wasn't really scoring with the ease and with the efficiency and the effectiveness that we had seen him earlier in the year. And I still think John Tonje is very good and a really experienced basketball player. It's going to help him win games. But I was starting to wonder if he was going to tap into that form that we had seen early in the regular season. And on Friday and on Saturday, we saw it. Yesterday, he couldn't hit anything. I thought he did his darndest, especially in the second half, to make an effort to get to the rim and to get to the foul line. And I was hoping, and this was mentioned on the broadcast too, so I sometimes feel like this is a casual, something that's said by fans watching at home on TV. But I do think sometimes when a shooter is struggling, the best thing that can happen is get to the free throw line, right? Get a couple of easy looks, see the ball go through the net. And that didn't even really get it going for Tonje. I thought he did well enough on a day where his jumper could not fall. But it was nice to see him get going on Friday and Saturday, and I think that bodes well for the tournament, knowing that he's got that gear in him that he can still tap into, and that it wasn't just a raging white hot streak in the middle of February that had since been left behind. I got to give a shout out to Carter Gilmore about Saturday as well. I'd watched the highlights to this yesterday, and I was having lunch here at Bill's this afternoon, and I was watching some highlights from Saturday just to remember, kind of jog my memory, some of the things that I saw and some of the things that I wanted to talk about. So Tonje led the way with 32, and Blackwell was terrific as well. Not necessarily from a jump shooting perspective, but got to the rim, especially late, a couple of really clutch drives, and he's such a good cutter too. Finding a backdoor cut or kind of coming in from the high elbow or the foul line extended down towards the block. And he had a couple of really, really timely finishes at the end of Saturday's game. I don't think it's hyperbolic to say in scoring or in eye test or, use whatever metric you want to use, that Carter Gilmore was clearly their third best player on Saturday. And he had the big block at the end. And he was Carter Gilmore, like the hometown kid who's turned into a folk hero of sorts this season. It's not that he was like a folk hero with one awesome play. Like he legit, his stat line, so he had 10 points, but he hit 2 threes. He had 5 rebounds, 5 assists, a steal, and 3 blocks. And he should have had another assist late. And I tweeted, I was kind of grouchy about it. But he had this play. I think he caught it at the top of the key, pump fake, little spin move or a move to get into the paint driving, and then made this unbelievable pass to Crowell, who caught it on the block, immediately went up and then clanked it and then got his own rebound and then missed that. So, of course, Carter Gilmore has the drive and the assist of his life, and Steven Crowell can't finish it. Not ripping Steven Crowell, is just that one particular play where it's like, of course he can't finish that. But I thought Gilmore was, for a player who's attracted so much criticism over the years. And then this year, it's like he's turned into this folk hero. He gets some of the loudest cheers I've heard at the Kohl's Center when he checks in. And on Saturday, I thought he was straight up, if not their third best player, maybe even their second, depending on how you weigh some of the things that he did versus some of the things that Blackwell did. It's not a competition. Both were crucial. But I thought Carter Gilmore was absolutely unbelievable on Saturday. I mean, shoot, he had 5. It's not that just he hit a couple of threes. Like, fill in the blank. Xavier Amos could hit a couple of threes. Janicki could hit a couple of threes. Kamari McGee could hit. Any bench player can come in and hit a couple of threes, and I'm not diminishing that because you need a player or two, especially in big games, to come in and kind of give you an unexpected lift of 6, 8, 9 points, something in there. But that's not all that Carter Gilmore did on Saturday. Like, he was dishing, he was rebounding, he was blocking, he was stealing, he was doing like a really, really well-rounded, and he played 30 minutes to boot. Like, he was super, super crucial. I think either their second or third most important player behind Tanjay right there with Blackwell. So that was something I noticed on Saturday. Yesterday, I got to commend Crowell, Winter, and Gilmore. They're 3 bigs. And they had played some more lineups, especially Saturday, playing Carter Gilmore at the 5, which allows them to operate a little faster. And Greg Gard talked about that in the postgame. But I thought the collective yesterday against Michigan of Crowell, Gilmore, and Winter, none of them scored. None of them poured it in at a high clip. No one poured it in at a high clip on either team yesterday. But just jogging my memory here, I mean, Crowell had 4 points. Winter had 5. Gilmore had 3. None of them scored at a high clip. I thought those 3, especially Crowell, played one of the better games and executed it at maybe the highest level I've seen all year. Not scoring, but I don't think their intention was for Crowell or Winter or Gilmore to score and to be the focal point on offense. And maybe they could have done a little bit more. I think they could have made it a more concerted effort, if nothing else, to just get the ball into the paint, just to get some more paint touches. They probably could have done a better job with that yesterday. But the way that I saw it, and again, I'm a fan at home, you may have saw it differently, right? Reporters and people on the scene, smarter basketball experts may have saw this differently. I thought the number one focus for Crowell, Winter, and Gilmore, their 3 bigs yesterday, were control the boards, control the boards, control the boards. Michigan's not getting second chance shot opportunities. We need to try to create some second chance shot opportunities ourselves. And Michigan, notable for running these twin towers, right? These 2 bigs, and they gave Wisconsin all sorts of fits back in December or early January when they played last. I think it might have been early December. Who cares? It was a while ago. Like, those 2 bigs, Golden, who makes Zach Edey look like friggin' Hakeem Olajuwon, and then the other guy, I don't remember his name. I don't really care. Like, they did a masterful job. Crowell, I thought, played one of his better games. I'm not trying to be dramatic or hyperbolic. I thought that was one of his best games I've seen him play as a Badger, from the perspective of controlling the paint and controlling the boards and limiting extra chances and possessions for Michigan. I thought those 3 guys, their group of bigs, understood the game plan, executed the game plan, stayed focused on their positioning, using their body, right? Blocking guys out. I thought those 3 were masterful yesterday. And it's a bummer that Wisconsin couldn't hit enough shots to get the win, because I thought that Crowell, Gilmore, and Winter set the table perfectly, neutralized Michigan's size, kept them under their season average for rebounds and offensive rebounds. Now, defensive rebounds were at a higher number just because there were so many shots that were missed, right? So you're going to have more rebounds, but offensive rebounds especially. Michigan didn't get second chance shot opportunities. They did not extend possessions. They did not get second chances. Like, I thought Wisconsin's bigs yesterday were terrific, which, if anything, should give you great excitement about what could happen in the tournament, because if Wisconsin is paired up or matched up against another team that has a lot of size and a lot of length, right? The last couple of years been a weakness for Wisconsin, especially with Steven Crowell at the helm. Like, I thought they handled that at an uber high level yesterday. I thought they defended at a really high level, but it started with the bigs. And that game was set up in such a winnable place if only a couple more shots go down. If only just a couple more shots. Whether it's 3-pointers, right? Mid-ranges. Greg Gard, that cut that you heard in the intro, said, it doesn't necessarily have to be 3-point shots either. Like, if we just draw a couple fouls, get to the line a couple more times. Like, it was just a difference of Tanjay, Blackwell, Klesmit, McGee to a lesser degree, Amos to a lot lesser degree. Like, if those guys, the perimeter players, just make 1 or 2 more plays, forget 1 more play each, right? They win that game. And it would have started with the job done down low by Crowell and by Gilmore and by Winter. I thought those 3 were unbelievable, securing possessions, preventing second chances. Like, I thought they set the table and executed the game plan perfectly. The offense from the perimeter scorers just wasn't there. And you chalk a little bit of that up to shooting luck. I think you chalk a little bit of that up to fatigue in the legs. Now, Wisconsin's players wouldn't use that as an excuse, and neither did Greg Gard. They said, look, we're really well conditioned. That wasn't a problem. Conditioning aside, you're playing 4 games in 4 days. You can be the best conditioned team in the country, that's still going to impact you on some level. And for a team like Wisconsin, that's pretty reliant on jump shooting, although the way they've defended recently, they're less reliant on it. And they get to the foul line really well too. But I thought offensively, especially on their jump shots and especially from three, like I thought the fatigue showed yesterday. I thought it showed for both teams. I will say, not to tell anyone how to fan, I was a little taken aback by some of the things that were tweeted during yesterday's game, especially in the first half. Everyone on Twitter's like, this is disgusting basketball. This is gross. Hey, that's two really, really good Big Ten teams coached by two really good coaches with legit star power and high-level college basketball players. And they were cold. Like, you guys have gotten so spoiled with games where Wisconsin hits everything, and we've gotten spoiled this year. Like, yesterday, that was a grubby, gritty, classic Big Ten game. It was low scoring. Okay. Not every game's going to be a barn burner. Not every game's going to be electric. So I just put my phone down. Like, sometimes, what'll happen is my phone will be dying, so I won't be able to scroll Twitter, endlessly during the game. So I'll leave it on the charger over on the kitchen counter or something. And I find that when I do that, I just kind of enjoy the game more. I watched the entire first half. I didn't go on Twitter the whole time. And then I checked Twitter, with a minute left at halftime or whatever. And I'm like, man, everyone's mad. Everyone's bent out of shape. It wasn't a pretty basketball game, but it was two teams who had played multiple days in a row. They've been in Indy a couple days in a row. Like, I don't know. I just was not as disgusted or as frustrated with the performance of Wisconsin or, the quality of basketball on the whole as a collective in yesterday's game. I thought it was a good game. Wisconsin should have won. I've said for weeks now that I think Michigan has been the recipient of a lot of luck in one possession games. See the Maryland game 2 nights ago. I thought Michigan, I'm not saying that the refs, I don't think the refs decided the game at all. But, did you watch the final? Did you watch the final minute yesterday? Like, there were 3 loose balls. All 3 of them bounced the way of Michigan. Like, this is kind of how it's gone in these closing moments of these one possession games for Michigan this year. And then on both ends, the way that I saw it, right? Golden goes into Crowell. It's probably a 50-50 shot that a whistle's blown there. They got the whistle. And then on the other end, very similar play, 50-50 shot that there's a whistle. Wisconsin doesn't get it. Like, that just, to me, kind of highlights the Michigan basketball experience in 2024, 2025. I think they're a good team. They're well coached. I think they have been the recipients of a ass pile of luck in the closing moments of some of these really, really close games. And I thought yesterday was just an extension of the Michigan team that I've watched for weeks and weeks and weeks now. So I know it's probably going to be a very popular upset pick. It's funny to see Michigan fans whining on Twitter, although everyone complains about their draw. And I want to talk about that coming back from the first break, because Wisconsin fans, I don't really think that Wisconsin fans should be complaining about this draw that much. But Michigan fans are like, how did we won the Big Ten tournament? And we ended up, what did they end up as, a 5? I think they ended up as a 5. I got a printed bracket in front of me. Numbers don't stick in my head. You guys know this by now. Draft values and groupings in the bracket. Where did Michigan end up? Did they end up as a 5? I'm pretty sure they ended up as a 5, right? Yeah, they're matched up with 12 San Diego in the first round of the Southern region. Like, Michigan fans, I think the committee did factor in the Big Ten tournament championship for Michigan. I think all that was factored. You're not that good. Because people watch these games and they see how they go. And Michigan is a hair's breadth away from losing. They should have lost so many games this year, and they didn't. And that's how sports go sometimes, and that's why they're kind of fun. But there's a reason that Michigan's been beneath Wisconsin and Michigan State and others in the KenPom all year, despite beating them in head-to-head matchups. There's a reason that they've been mostly below the other elite teams in the Big Ten and the AP. And there's a reason that Michigan wasn't favored against Wisconsin yesterday. There's a reason that they're a 5 seed. Is because a lot of people, smarter people, much smarter than me, watch these games, watch Michigan and go, nice, you guys won, but I mean, good God, you're not confidently beating anybody. Like, if Maryland just would have stopped ball at the end of the game on Saturday, Michigan wouldn't have even advanced to Sunday. But Michigan has been, the recipient of a couple of teams just falling asleep in the final 5 to 10 seconds of a game. And they've taken advantage of that. They've made shots, or they've finished at the rim, or they've hit their free throws, sure. But someone needs to open the door for you to just drive coast to coast and shoot a friggin' layup with the game on the line, or you need to get the 50-50 whistle. And they got it at the end of yesterday's game. The refs absolutely did not decide the game, but the way that the whistle went on one end and not the other. And there were literally 3 loose balls. You talk about loose ball luck or batted ball luck, 3 of them in one possession. All 3 were reviewed. I didn't really have a complaint about that. Felt like those probably should have been reviewed. Those were huge calls in a huge moment. But all 3 of them just out off Wisconsin. Michigan maintains possession, and then they get the 50-50 call that then isn't called on the other end. Like, that's just kind of the Michigan experience. So no, I'm not surprised they're a 5 seed. They weren't favored yesterday for a reason, and they're going to be a very popular upset pick in the first weekend for all of the reasons that I'm highlighting. And yeah, I'm blowing off a little frustration because this Michigan team's drove me up a wall. I think Wisconsin's better than Michigan and Michigan State. I wanted both of these matchups. They got them. They beat Michigan State on Saturday. I think Wisconsin should have won yesterday, but that's watching Michigan basketball in 2024, 2025. Your thoughts on the weekend, your thought about the Badgers' placement. They will be in Denver. They'll play early on Thursday. A lot of people want to complain, and I get it. But I also, because complaining is part of life, complaining is part of sports, far be it from me to criticize anyone for complaining. I love complaining. It's a blast. But I don't know that Wisconsin fans should be that bent out of shape about the seating and the placements. We'll talk about that coming up next. I'll take your texts and your comments next. 608-321-1670.
This is the Wisco Sports Show with Grant Bills on the Wisconsin Sports Zone Radio Network.
The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 3 minutes. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 2 minutes. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 1 minute. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 30 seconds.
Extremely physical. I mean, bodies, it's a physical game, and both teams were not backing off on either end, specifically in the paint. So the fact that we got the ball in the paint, shot chart looked pretty good for the most part. You got to finish some things at the rim, and we got to do a better job, I guess, of drawing contact if we didn't get fouled when we went in there.
That's Greg Gard yesterday after the game. And I like that comment about physicality and tough play in the paint. it wasn't the prettiest game yesterday, but I think some college basketball fans, some Big Ten fans, and I think some Badgers fans, a lot of pissing and moaning in that first half. You'll say, oh, no one can make a shot. Oh, this is horrendous. I don't know. Not every basketball game is going to be a work of art. You know what I mean? They're not all going to be first round picks. They're not all going to be great. And I thought there was a certain physicality and a certain type of renaissance thing going on in the game yesterday that I appreciated. I also, as these shots were going clang, 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 I also viewed and watched and enjoyed the game a little bit more positively because deep down I thought the Badgers were going to win because I think they're significantly better than Michigan. I still think they're significantly better than Michigan. I think Michigan has been the recipient of a lot of one-score luck. And I mean, geez, just look at the final minute. They get the 50-50 call. The Badgers don't. They get on 3 different occasions a loose ball that's batted out of bounds. We go to review, and in all 3 occasions, the ball goes Michigan's way. It's like, yeah, that's kind of Michigan in 2024, 2025. 608-321-1670. I mentioned at the beginning of the show, this will be the only time I'm on the air live this week because I'm headed to a wedding in Mexico. It's not a vacation. So you guys don't get to come at me, especially, and there is a couple of you, and you know who you are, and I think you do it mostly just to mess with me. But there's a couple of you who are always like, oh, taking off March Madness. Yeah, really good, Grant. Yeah, great. Huge week for the Badgers. Greg Gard, yeah, you're going on vacation. I'm not going on vacation. It's a wedding that was planned and scheduled. I'm not even in the wedding. Now, that's not to say I don't need to go. Very close friends. I just didn't quite make the cut. It's fine. But this is out of my control. So I'm going to Mexico. So I said, sorry, at the beginning of the show. I said, sorry, I won't be here all week to take calls from Thomas in La Crosse and Tony in Texas. And this text says, wouldn't it be amazing if Thomas was in your friend group and at the destination wedding as well? Yeah, get down there and Thomas in La Crosse is sitting by the pool. Hey, Grant, I'm down here with my parents. I just had I don't think Thomas drinks based on what he said. He went on a cruise a couple weeks ago. Remember this? He turned 21 and he had some sort of, we don't need to go through the history of Thomas in La Crosse. Anonymous Pete says team's brain was overloaded with basketball, need a couple days rest. Felt like hour 5 on a video game binge. You start to forget how to play the game entirely. Your rank absolutely plummets. Couple days off and you're suddenly white hot. Badgers will be white hot Thursday. Well, let's hope so. We could talk about Thursday here in a minute. I want to talk about the Badgers draw. This text says Wolf is the other big guy. Yeah, what is it? Golden and Wolf. I don't care. I do retroactively now want to apologize to Zach Edey. I would say often that I don't think he is very skilled. I think he is a clobbering Clydesdale with 2 left feet and 2 left hands. And after watching that Golden guy, I would like to apologize to Zach Edey. Because that golden mongoloid makes Zach Edey look like Hakeem Olajuwon. Wolf, the other big guy. So you tell me. I'm not interested. Tom in Oak Creek says, can't call in since I'm on call. Can't take your call because I'm not in studio today. But wanted to say it was a great weekend of basketball from the Badgers, even though they came up short in the championship game. I think the seeding was very fair, if not favorable. Dave from Monona asks, are the phones working today? No, I'm broadcasting live at Bill's studio. Apologies about that, Dave. Just follow up with another text, whatever you'd want to say. I know you won't be able to present it in your excellent caller delivery that you've developed over your many years of sports calling. So sorry about that. And Tom, I agree with you. I know that it's Monday and they lost yesterday. I don't want to lose Saturday's game in the shuffle because that was one of my favorite Badger games in a while. And I think a lot of Badgers fans, Wisconsin sports fans really enjoyed that. And they're going to remember Saturday for a long time. So I don't just want to skip past that and forget about it to complain about yesterday's game just because the show is on Monday and the most recent game was yesterday. So I'm glad that you feel that way, Tom. I think big picture, the weekend was a success. The tournament was a success. And as I talked about, I did a Twitter space with Ben Kenny that Zach joined last night. How fun was that for those of you that were in there? And I said, I think the seeding committee places value on these conference tournaments. I think it's more of and this is just an outside perspective. This is my guess and my observation. Based on the seedings that come out, right? The biggest indicator that we have into how these things are valued is the results. And then we got to kind of reverse engineer it. We know some of the touch points they used, but it can be a little spotty. It's like the college football playoff. They say that they use A, B, and C. And then we're like, okay, so you ended up with these teams, not really sure where the ABC came from, but the results, this is the only thing we have to go off and we can reverse engineer it. I think the committee factors in the conference tournaments in a pass-fail type of way. Like, either you show well and you win a couple of games and you fight hard and are good and you get a pass, or you lose in catastrophic fashion on Wednesday or Thursday and it's a fail. Like, I don't think the seeding committee is drawing a line between, well, if you make it to Saturday, A, and if you make it to Sunday, B. Like, I think it's more of a pass-fail thing. And I know Michigan fans got their thongs in a knot because, well, how did we won the whole tournament? We're a 5 seed. How's that? Because you're not that good. Oh my God. Not that good. You've been looking at the KenPom all season long. You've been looking at these Vegas lines. Michigan hasn't been favored in these games for a reason. And I am excited to watch Michigan and San Diego State. I'm excited to see how they fare in the tournament because I'm not going to say I'm going to bet against them because I don't bet. I don't have enough money and I'm not smart enough. But if I was smarter and if I did have money, maybe I'd pick against Michigan. Just seems like a team that's been cruising for a loss for a long time in one of these games. And the other team just refuses to indulge them. Let's talk about Wisconsin's draw for a sec because I know a lot of people are a little bit perplexed. I thought when they went on Saturday that they were going to be headed to Milwaukee. Like I just had that in my mind because we had heard so often, well, if they do this, they can earn their way to Milwaukee. I just thought, after all of this talk about the Milwaukee cluster and ending up in Milwaukee, that if they showed well down the stretch, including a nice showing, again, more of a pass-fail perspective with the Big Ten tournament, like do you go on a nice little run or do you fail instantly? Like those are the two outcomes. And I think that's the way the committee sometimes takes and views these conference tournaments. Like I thought Wisconsin would have been in Milwaukee. And then they're not in Milwaukee. And then we learn they're playing on Thursday, which seems a little bit unfair, I will admit, for a team that plays in the final on Sunday. Like the first group plays between Thursday and Friday. Why does a Sunday finalist, a team that plays 4 games in 4 days and plays on Sunday at 2:30, why do they instantly need to turn around and not just play on Thursday, but play early on Thursday? Like that does seem a little unfair. Okay. Seems like a couple of things up against Wisconsin. But the opponent, I think, makes up for it. And look, Montana could beat Wisconsin. It's March Madness. These things happen. But the way that I view it, Wisconsin got kind of a tough draw in that they don't get to stay home and that they need to play Thursday. But I think the committee did them a solid by also setting them up with an opponent that should be quite beatable. Of course, disclaimer, any team can beat any team in this tournament because it's March Madness. And it's unpredictable. And if I were able to sit here and tell you confidently that Wisconsin would beat Montana, then these brackets wouldn't be so hard to fill out and no one would enjoy it. And we wouldn't get to tweet about how our brackets are busted every spring. Like, obviously, yes, nothing is a given. But at least for a team that's a 3 seed, it's not like Wisconsin's a 1. At least for a team that's a 3 seed, I think you got about as manageable of a draw at the 14 as you can get. Montana plays in the Big Sky. They don't play a lot of Power 5 games, but the Power 5 games that they did play this year, they got rocked. They lost to Oregon by, don't ask me to do math. They lost 79-48. Do the math on your own time, I guess. They lost to Tennessee 92-57. And as I scroll, unless I'm missing one, those were their matchups against the Power 5. Yeah, other than that, it's a lot of Montana States, Sacramento State, Idaho, and I love the Vandals. I mean, shoot, they lost to St. Thomas. You know what I mean? Like Montana, when tested against higher level Power 5 competition this year, they didn't just lose, they got blasted. So the way that I view this draw and the way that I think Badgers fans should try to view this draw, pros and cons, right? There's good and bad with everything. Like, yeah, they got to play early on Thursday and they don't get to stay home in Milwaukee. Okay. You also get about as manageable of a first round opponent as you can get, unless you're a 1 seed. Like if you're a 1 seed and you end up with, a 16, and I look at the bracket and I don't even know the names. I don't even know any of these 16 seeds. You know what I mean? Like Duke's playing, and I had to print it off. What is this? AMER/MSN? MSM? What could that? I don't know. I don't know what that stands for. I don't know any of these 16 schools. In the past, like Wisconsin played Coastal in 2015, and who was the team that beat Virginia? Baltimore? Like, yeah, you could play a total slap of a 16 seed if you weren't a 1. But my point is, as a 3, about the most manageable matchup that you can ask for is a team like Montana. And I know some people are pointing out the altitude. Well, Wisconsin's got to travel to altitude in Montana. They're more used to it. Missoula's kind of at altitude. I was looking it up today. Missoula's at about 3,000 feet. So, yeah, they're up higher. But it's not like they're at mile high like Denver is. Montana might be a little bit better equipped for it, but I don't think it's going to be that big of a deal. Watch, it'll be a huge deal, and I'll be wrong. I just think, yeah, playing early on Thursday is rough, and playing at altitude and not getting to stay in Milwaukee is rough. But you get to play a Big Sky team that got blasted in their only 2 matchups against Power 5 schools this year. Like, this should be a very, very winnable game. Next round, BYU, like, they can score, but also, I've listened now to I listened to Ebo's morning show this morning and a couple callers, and then I did Bill's show. And I've consumed as much Wisconsin content, and I've looked at a lot of Badgers basketball Twitter the last 24, 48 hours. And I just got to remind Badgers fans, I want to remind you guys, like, it's not the job of the committee to lay out a primrose path for everybody. You know what I mean? Like, I've seen a lot of people like, well, yeah, I'm not worried about Montana, but BYU, I mean, what a tough matchup. Well, the game's to go to the Sweet 16. Who do you expect them to play? Like, this tournament is not filled with a bunch of slaps and sucks. Like, these are all worthwhile teams who have earned this. And no team is supposed to have, least of all, 3 seed is supposed to have this magical, easy path to the Sweet 16. So Badgers fans like, oh, we got to go to Denver. Yeah, a lot of teams got to travel. Oh, we got to play early Thursday. Yeah, that's how the tournament works. You know what I mean? Well, if they beat Montana, they beat Montana. I'm not worried about that. But then they got to play BYU. Yeah, and that game will be to the Sweet 16. You know what I mean? Like, you don't just get to go to the Sweet 16, and Badgers fans are more aware of that. They should be more familiar with that idea than anybody else because it's been a couple of years now. So I understand complaining is part of the American way. It's certainly a massive part of sports fandom, and far be it for me to tell you not to complain. But just keep in mind that it is not the job of the selection committee to lay out the best path so that Greg Gard and the Badgers can get back to the Sweet 16. You know what I mean? Like, you're going to have to beat a real team. You're going to have to beat BYU, and they can beat BYU. I don't know what the spread would be on a neutral. I think the last time I checked last night, I don't know if it moved. Wisconsin was favored by almost 17 points over Montana. Let's see if the line has moved or if any money has come in. I don't know if sharps are rushing this. Yeah, it's still 16.5. Like, this round 1 game is about as good as you can ask for from a matchup perspective as a 3 seed. Yeah, you got to travel. You got to play early. Okay, so tough. You know what I mean? You win that game, you beat BYU, then you get a little bit of a longer break going into next week. There are some good parts of this draw. There are some bad parts of the draw. Them's the breaks. That's the tournament, right? So I know everyone's already looking ahead to BYU, which is, I think, a little silly, but, Montana, they're favored by almost 17 points. Like, okay, so you got to beat BYU, but guess what? That game will be to go to the Sweet 16. That needs to be earned on some level. You don't just get to play 2 miserable, awful teams and get awarded a path to the Sweet 16. It's not how it works. 608-321-1670. We'll take a couple of minutes. I'll come back and I will address some of your comments on the live stream, YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter. You can tweet at me at Wisco Grant, and you can text 608-321-1670. We'll talk a little bit more college basketball next.
This is the Wisco Sports Show with Grant Bills on the Wisconsin Sports Zone Radio Network.
The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 5 minutes. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 4 minutes. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 3 minutes. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 2 minutes. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 1 minute. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 30 seconds.
North Carolina being in the NCAA tournament is a crime. Is a crime. They had 2 wins over the field, one of which came over American. They had 1 win over a high major team in the field, and that came against UCLA in a game that UCLA gave away. If you're going to hand a team that is 2-10 against teams in the field a bid to the NCAA tournament, what are we doing here? West Virginia did lose Tucker DeVries, their best player.
But back in December.
They were able to win at Kansas shorthanded. This team beat Iowa State in Morgantown.
Yep.
They own neutral site wins over Arizona and Gonzaga.
That's right.
Why don't the results matter? West Virginia should have been in. I would have put Indiana in over North Carolina because they at least beat Purdue. They went to East Lansing and beat a Michigan State team that's on the 2 line. The Tar Heels being in was flat out wrong.
Good rant there from John Fanta. I have a very similar rant from John Rothstein. Maybe we'll play that in a little bit. This is a part of college sports that I absolutely love. The ranking and the evaluation and the prognostication for the college football playoff and the bracketology, as I have this printed off in my hand here, because I need a hard copy. I want to be able to circle games that I'm interested in and circle matchups and regions. This is a part of college sports that I find absolutely fascinating. Not the data. Like I was looking at the KenPom over the break. That's not my bag. Like finding ways to rank teams and they're going to end up here and the forecast puts me. That doesn't interest me at all. Let me be specific. That part of the thing doesn't interest me. What interests me is when the results are spit out by the committee or the selection, whoever, there's always one team that definitely shouldn't have been in, and you can make the case that one or two other teams got screwed. That's what I like. That's the good stuff. Florida State in college football 2 years ago. That's not because I care about Florida State or thought they were going to do anything, but it makes for great banter. Makes for great impassioned rants by people who cover the sport closely, and fans feel so, oh my God, Florida State fans, we feel so persecuted. We won't let that go for a million years. Just like TCU fans still haven't let go of, what year was that? Where they were comfortably in the college football playoff, and then they blasted a team in the Big 12 title game, and then all of a sudden, oh, look, you guys are on the outside looking in. I think they fell to, fifth or sixth. So that part of college football is very entertaining to me. I think mostly because it caters to good talk. For example, that John Fanta rant that I just played for you, that was not on the Field of 68. That was not on the CBS Sports Network College Basketball Selection Show. That was on Breakfast Ball this morning with Craig Carton and Danny Parkins. You think that show's talking about college basketball at all throughout the season? No. And that's fine, because college basketball, at least on a national level, doesn't really lend itself well to good sports talk television and topics and debate. On a local level, on this show, we're on in Madison, Eau Claire, La Crosse. Like, yeah, this is great up in Marinette. We're all Badgers fans. We're Marquette fans. We're watching these games, local kids. Great stories, right? Very, very entertaining. Great for this show. But for Fox Sports 1 in the morning, Auburn, Tennessee, what a game. Who cares? It doesn't give you any good topics or debates. But a team getting porked and getting left out, and I think the team that most feel were probably harmed most by this was West Virginia, but also Indiana has a case. And you start talking about their wins over, quad one wins, but not just quad one wins over teams that are comfortably in the tournament field, Michigan State on the 2 line, like Fanta said. So I don't care that UNC's in there, and I certainly don't care that Indiana and West Virginia were left out. I don't care. What I care about is the debate and the angry people on TV and tell them we're going to scream into the void about this until the next thing comes along, and then we'll move along. But this is a part of college sports that I really, really love. The teams that are on the bubble in football or basketball, the teams that are left out, and then the teams that get in instead. Because now, right, we can watch what UNC does, and if they dump their pants in the first round here, like, we can throw that back in the face of the committee. Or UNC all of a sudden goes on a run, and then the committee gets to be like, well. Like, I think that's a very fun part of college sports. I enjoy it. I don't care about the math at all that goes into this. Like, there are shows that take place throughout the season, bracketology, and, they're forecasted here. I don't care how the sausage is made, but I can't wait to eat the sausage when it is finished, when it is done, when it is smoked and cured and all of those things. 608-321-1670 if you would like to text the show. Can't take your calls today because I'm here in Bill's studio. Dry fly out in Montana. The Grizz may have lost to the only Power 5 teams they have played, but that shouldn't take away from their scrappy performance they strung together in Boise just a week ago. That being said, FTG. So if you think I'm making these people up, I know who Dry Fly is. He's a buddy that lives and listens out in Montana. And because I know him rather well, he may have a connection to Montana State. I've always been a Grizz man over the Cats. And I do, Grant, why do you care? Zach, if he would do this. Oh, yeah, Grant, you spend a lot of time watching FCS football. I dabble, maybe 1 or 2 games a year. What, I can't have a team that I pull for over the others? Grizzlies over the Cats. The Idaho Vandals are pretty fun. You ever stumble into an FCS football game? This was not this last fall, 2 falls ago. Okay. Oops, sorry. I had a wedding up in Chautauqua. This is what happened. Okay. I had a wedding up in Chautauqua. It was on a Saturday night. And there's a river that I love fly fishing more than life itself. About let's say an hour and a half north of there, right up towards Lake Superior, up on 53, almost all the way up. So in my mind, it's like, well, I got to drive a couple hours north to Chautauqua. While I'm up there, I might as well go fish. I'll get a hotel room in Rice Lake so I can stay there after the wedding on Saturday night. And then I'll spend all day Sunday fishing that river, and then I'll drive back down. When I was in this hotel room, this was a Saturday night in Rice Lake. And if you know Rice Lake, yeah, I'm sure everyone's like, yeah, Grant, tell us the exact details of the layout of Rice Lake. If you're familiar with Rice Lake, you know the Quick Trip that's right off of 53, like it's right there. There's a hotel right behind that Quick Trip. I can't remember if it's a Hampton or what it is, but it's right there. So I was staying there. I had some leftover booze from the wedding. I was just in my hotel room by myself, basically just wanting to go to bed so I can get up and go fishing the next day. I walked over to the Quick Trip, get a pint of Ben and Jerry's, They were out of spoons, had to use a wooden pat, one of those wooden things that they have in school lunchrooms. It sucked. Made my way back to the hotel room. What was on TV? Not much, but I believe it was the Montana Grizz versus the Idaho Vandals in Moscow, in that cool Moscow, Idaho, not Russia. Grow the game though, I guess, if you can, in that like field house dome thing up in Idaho. Very, very compelling television. It's fun. It's fun sports. But if we're talking about Big Sky programs or Montana programs specifically, I do prefer the Grizz to the Cats, because the Cats, a lot of cake eaters in Bozeman. Missoula, more of a ham and egg town. Anonymous Pete says, to hammer the point, Minnesota, Iowa, Nebraska, Northwestern have a combined 1 Sweet 16 appearance in Grant's lifetime. Yeah. So the point that I was making before the break is a lot of Badgers fans are looking ahead to round 2. It's like, I got to play BYU. That's a team that can really score, and that's a real threat. Yeah. The team that they're playing in round 2 is a legit team. It will be to go to the Sweet 16. We have been, and I don't want to say spoiled, because that's a charged term. As Badgers fans, we've enjoyed a lot of success in our lifetime, to the point where I don't know that people my age, especially maybe around 25 to 30, we've only known Bo Ryan and Greg Gard. Right, a Sweet 16 appearance, that's not getting us out of bed. I've seen Final Fours. I've seen Elite Eights. You know what I mean? That's not going to get me out of bed. A Sweet 16 appearance is a hell of an accomplishment. So yeah, they'll have to play BYU in round 2. And that will be a legitimate matchup. It should be a legit matchup. You're playing to be one of the final 16 teams standing. Dryfly in Montana follows up, says, the real question is who has the better body of water, Lake Mendota versus the Clark Fork. I'm not a huge Lake Mendota fan. It's not anything against Madison. I don't find it to be a particularly stimulating lake. I don't like lakes that are just big and round. I need some variance. I need a channel that leads to another. I need some variety. It's like, hey, let's go and cruise, like Lake Menominee in Menominee, for our listeners up there. Or like Half Moon Lake in Eau Claire. Great example. There's some geographic variance. Let's drive around the corner. Let's go over there. Right? Like, I grew up in Menominee, Lake Menominee, fine lake. It's actually pretty crummy. It smells like ass and isn't really safe to swim in or go in sometimes. But hey, it means the world to us in that town, okay? It's just big and round. Hey, let's go on a boat ride. Where do you want to go? Let's over there, over to the other middle part. I like variance in my body of water. So I'll pass on Lake Mendota. Thank you, Dryfly. You are our expert on the Montana Grizz. Although apparently you're a Cats man, which bums me out, because that's, I don't know, a little stuffy. Bozeman, all the Richie Riches in Bozeman. The Eau Claire of the West is what I call it. We'll continue this discussion next. I don't even know what we're discussing, but we need to take a break, so we'll be right back.
This is the Wisco Sports Show with Grant Bills on the Wisconsin Sports Zone Radio Network.
The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 3 minutes. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 2 minutes. Wisco Sports Show will resume in 1 minute. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 30 seconds.
If the criteria for the NCAA tournament in terms of getting an at-large bid is to beat other NCAA tournament teams if you're on the bubble, how in the world could North Carolina get an at-large bid over Indiana and over West Virginia? Indiana, unlike North Carolina, has no quad 3 and 4 losses. Indiana went on the road to East Lansing and beat Michigan State, who's a 2 seed, and beat Purdue on its home floor, who is a 4 seed in this bracket. And Indiana did not get in the NCAA tournament. Then let's talk about West Virginia. West Virginia won a game at Allen Fieldhouse. West Virginia beat Gonzaga on a neutral court. It beat Arizona on a neutral court. It also beat Iowa State. And North Carolina is in over those 2 teams. I'm just waiting for somebody to say, we got some swamp water to sell you in Florida. That's how I feel right now. Now, with that said, I want to bring this in. North Carolina not deserving to be in has no bearing on how the Tar Heels could play in the bracket.
That's right.
Look at VCU in 2011.
That's John Rothstein, excellent analyst. Beating up on the committee as John Fanta was. You heard that cut last segment for putting in UNC. That swamp water, it took a sec for me to land. I'm like, wait, what does he mean by that? That if you think UNC deserves to be in there over West Virginia or Indiana, then I got some swamp water in Florida. That is, I guess, a colloquial cousin of you could sell ice to an Eskimo. You know what I mean? Like if you could sell swamp water in Florida, you could sell anything to anyone. I don't care about UNC, and I definitely don't care about Indiana or West Virginia. I know their governor held some stupid press conference today to sue the NCAA. Yeah, the NCAA is dumb, and they get a lot of things wrong, but it's college sports. Like if you're on the bubble, your fate is in the hands of a committee of random, don't they say, isn't the expression a camel is a horse built by a committee? Like it's not going to be perfect. The bracket's never gonna be perfect, which is part of why it's fun. You know what I mean? And it's a big part of why I enjoy the college football playoff, and a big part of the reason why, like, I thought it was fine at 4, because you were always going to have 1 or 2 teams that really thought, like, yeah, we could have done it. Like TCU all those years ago, and what was that, like 8? I don't think it was like 10 years ago. Whenever I don't even know when the 14 playoff started, but that year TCU was comfortably in the Final Four. Then they won their conference championship game. And then all of a sudden they were on the outside looking in. And everyone's like, well, how did that? Like, that's fun. That's entertaining. That makes for good sports talk. It's probably not fair to TCU, those players or their fans. It wasn't fair to Florida State a couple of years ago. And it's probably not fair to Indiana or to West Virginia. But I think it's more fair in college basketball because you just have to be one of 64. You don't have to be one of 4. I guess you technically have to be one of 68. Like, so I'm not gonna cry for you. But then the governor of West Virginia comes out today and he's got a podium and it says the national corruption. Like he did a play on words. We're too obsessed with nicknames and alliteration in society now. And I blame Donald Trump a little bit, not because I have a problem with Donald Trump, because it's not what we're talking about, but Donald Trump's so good at like turn of phrase, like adding a word to a name that's clever, like to, a good nickname. Nobody is that good at it. He's the only one who can do it at that level. So just leave the nicknames, leave the alliteration to him. The national, I got to figure out what it is. We'll talk more about this. Well, not this, but we'll talk more college basketball next. Keep going over the bracket, talk more Badgers too. Our number 2 Wisco Sports Show next.
This is a Wisconsin Sports Zone update.
Well, the Badgers going to head to Denver tomorrow. It's where they're going to play Montana on Thursday in the opening round of the NCAA tournament. Wisconsin heads in, coming off a productive few days at the Big Ten tournament, even though they fell in the championship game to Michigan yesterday. While disappointed in how that played out, Coach Greg Gard still thinks highly of his team heading into the tournament.
This group has had a heck of a year. I mean, we were picked to finish 12th in the Big Ten, and now if you look at the seed lines, we're in the top 12 of the country. So when 26 games of the schedule we played, they've left it all on the floor for us all year long, and they know they got a lot of basketball left in front of them. We can do some damage here in the next few weeks.
Again, third seeded Wisconsin going to face 14th seeded Montana on Thursday. Tip is slated for 12:30 on TNT. Marquette, meanwhile, is the number 7 seed. They will face New Mexico on Friday night in Cleveland. Turning to the Bucks, they were 121-105 losers to Oklahoma City last night with just 15 games left in the regular season. They sit in 4th place in the Eastern Conference, half game up on Indiana, 1.5 up on Detroit. Milwaukee open a West Coast road trip tomorrow against Golden State. Also got stops in LA, Sacramento, Phoenix, and Denver.
Rural Mutual Insurance, keeping Wisconsin strong.
Dealing with a lot, including long days, stress, and fatigue. This is your reminder to take breaks, stretch, body. Avoid farm accidents by keeping yourself healthy. Visit ruralmutual.com to learn how Rural Mutual supports Wisconsin farmers and prioritize safety on the farm.
Rural Mutual Insurance, keeping Wisconsin strong.
Well, opening day closing in for the Brewers. Milwaukee going to face the Yankees out in New York a week from Thursday. Milwaukee's home opener going to come 2 weeks from today against the Royals. Brewers back in action this afternoon out in Arizona as they take on San Diego. With this Wisconsin Sports Zone Network update, I'm Zach Heil.
It rolls out. The door is open for Michigan State. 3 seconds. Foul. No call. He got fouled. It's over. Wisconsin has done it. Wow. They're going back to the Big Ten Tournament Championship game. And that's it. Michigan wins the Big Ten Tournament. Let the dancing begin.
Need to draw a few more fouls and/or knock down some more shots. When you got a chance to get some wide open looks. You know, if you're going to win a championship, you got to make play. And part of making a play is knocking down a shot and take that win.
This is where Wisconsin gathers to talk sports. Packers, Brewers, Badgers, Bucks. The Wisco Sports Show is on the air. Now, here's your host, Grant Bills.
So Dave from Monona has chimed in, and I feel a little bad for Dave because we got a call earlier during Bill's shows, Greg in Waukesha, great caller. And I didn't know this about Greg, but Bill had to let me know and let the rest of the audience know that Greg is blind. Greg can't see, right? So then I brought up Dave. It's like Dave will call in and he will complain about Steven Crowell, like the slowest, least athletic guy in the court. It's like, Dave, you can't even see. How are you drawing these conclusions? And now he's been framing himself on the morning show as the body language expert. It's like, Dave, you don't even have eyeballs. And I'm not calling him out. Like, if you're around Dave, he will show you. And Dave texted in. He said, "Hey, what's going on with the phones? Why aren't you taking calls?" And I responded. I said, "Dave, I'm not in studio today. I'm in Bill's studio, so I don't have access to the phones. I don't have a producer back there to answer the phones for me. So sorry." And Dave did not see my text, so he texted my cell phone. Dave has my cell phone number because I picked him up for the golf outing a couple of years ago. So he occasionally will text me. And I said, "Dave, I can't take your call, but you know what? Text me your comment, and I'll read it on the air." Dave actually doesn't have a Badgers comment. He has a comment on destination weddings. I am leaving for Mexico early tomorrow morning. I will be gone through like Friday afternoon, but I'll be off the rest of the week. Sorry if you wanted Badgers talk this week. I wish it would be different. I didn't plan the wedding. I'm not the one getting married. It's not like I'm just taking off to Mexico. Although, you know what? If I was, it would be my right. So climb out of my rear end. Before you even climb in, let me tell you to climb out. It's just a couple of you, but it does get up my butt. So Dave did send me a message, and I will read it to him. It says, "I was going to give you crap about destination weddings and how everybody who's not in the wedding gets scammed. LOL. The bride and planner will charge extra to everyone coming behind the scenes that pays for their trip, hotel, any activities. That's why something brides love destination weddings, speech to talk. Again, he's blind. That's why brides love destination weddings, because everyone in the party will end up paying for everything for them, and they don't even realize what they're being charged for. Why do you think the bride wants these types of weddings? And depending on how many people are invited in the activities, I have known about 5 of these in my lifetime. Or the bride charges everyone extra along with the planner. That usually pays for the bride's airfare, hotel, anything like that. When you and yours get married, he used her name, I will not on the radio, get married and want a destination wedding is the best way to go. Go ahead and do that and come back, double up and have a big party, or everyone brings you money and gifts. Sometimes the bride will get extra and pay for her matron of honor and her guest. Well, anyway, enjoy yourself and have a good time. Okay. The rest of the text is about something else. On destination weddings, Dave, it is more expensive, I guess. I'm also getting a vacation out of this. You know what I mean? I get to sit by a beach or by a pool for a couple of days. So it's not like we're just sitting in a convention hall, waiting for this wedding to start. You also, Dave, you act like normal weddings aren't expensive as hell. You act like the wedding industrial complex, big wedding, doesn't absolutely put 30 yards over a barrel in 2025. Like, well, yeah, if you want to go fancy, you can do a destination wedding, or you can do something more responsibly and just rent out a local venue for a smallish wedding, 200 people, a meal and music. Okay, well, there's 28 grand. Like, yeah, sure. Let's be more responsible. Let's hold a more responsible wedding. Not everyone can afford to go to Mexico. Let's just get a venue in downtown La Crosse, and we'll get it catered and get a DJ and someone to take pictures and, the flowers and everything. Yeah, much more low key. We'll save money. It'll only cost like 30 grand. It's fine. It's no big deal at all. Thank you for the text, Dave. This is the Wisco Sports Show. My name is Grant Bills. If you want to contribute to the show, you got to be on the text line today, 608-321-1670. Uncle Packer says, on Sunday, it seemed like something was up with the barometric pressure. Something was off. 3-pointers were just not falling, not for the Badgers or the Bucks combined. They're probably 6 of 50 combined. Well, I don't know about combined, but I think it's a lot more than that. Wisconsin shot, I got the box score here in front of me. It's just got to load. Wisconsin shot 39 threes and only hit 7 of them. I don't know how many the Bucks shot last night. I'm not going to lie. I didn't watch. I was doing Pack-A-Day with Andy, and then I was getting some stuff ready for Mexico. And sorry, I missed the Bucks game last night. I'm sorry. But even if I'd watched the Bucks game, my take would be the same. They're a good team. They're not great. They can't beat the best of the best. So 4th or 5th seed, that's probably about where they're going to fall. And it's not because they're lazy or they don't try, although I don't think you're particularly well coached. They're just not as good. A quick Packer note, it feels a bit melancholy to think that the Packers have not made a move yet after the GM said, I was really pumped about a new game changer. At least he keeps your interest. With the other teams in our division making changes, maybe more changes yet to come with the Vikings, I'm worried about finishing last in our own division, and I'm an optimist. Yeah, I think all of that is fair. I talked about that. We talked about that on Pack-A-Day last night when I was doing it with Andy, and that's a drum that I've been banging too. Like, I will never say that the Packers. Let me back up. There's a lot of Packers fans who believe that the organization is content with just getting to the playoffs, and that's nuts. You know what I mean? Like, they want to win at the highest level. They're really motivated to win at the highest level. I sometimes wonder if they try to accomplish that goal with enough urgency, especially now, because I think the Vikings are legit, and I think the Lions are legit. And I hope that Matt LaFleur and Brian Gutekunst aren't sitting back and going, well, these teams, they'll fall off. Because historically, in my lifetime, that's what's happened. You know what I mean? This text just says, enjoy Mexico. I had so many great times there. Yeah, I'm just trying to get some sun and not get sick. I'm told that you got to be careful with the water. Only drink bottled water. Okay, that's fine. Says, I'm with you on the legs. Anything south of Highway 10, I would not eat. I'll fish, but would not eat. No idea what that's referring to. So let's just move on cleanly. Some Badgers takes. We can kind of reset the show. We're talking a little bit about UNC. It's one of my favorite parts of college sports is when a team gets snubbed from a tournament or when a team gets robbed. Florida State or TCU historically in football, or now everyone's mad that UNC is in there, which is fine. Like, you can be mad that they put UNC in. And I suppose in being mad that UNC made it, you then have to give the alternative that you would have put in. Fine. I'm just not going to sit here and cry tears for Indiana or West Virginia. Like, you are at the hands of the committee. If you can't be firmly one of the top 64, 68 teams in the country, like if your team's 68 or 69, nice. Like, and you don't make it, I'm not crying tears for you. I don't think UNC was the correct choice. And it just happened that their, athletic director was on the committee and stood to make a lot of money from making it in. Like, okay, so there's that. But my team, operated at a very high level, and they were within the tournament with a bullet, as they have been for just about every year of my life. So I'm not going to cry tears for Indiana, and I'm certainly not going to cry tears for West Virginia, even though their hack governor turned that into a dog and pony show today. I forgot the name of the governor. Don't know what political party he's from. It's not a political comment. I just think it's lame to set up a podium and call the NCAA the National Corruption Athletic Association or whatever. Like, that's not that clever. Everyone wants to be Trump. No, Trump is wittier. He is sharper. He's better with this stuff than anybody else. Although Denny and Holman acquitted himself nicely when he called in and said Brian Gouda can't or Gouda won't. I thought that was funny. So give Denny and Holman credit for that one. Trying his luck at nicknames. I thought that was very good. I think Wisconsin's draw is fine. I thought they would be in Milwaukee. I guess I just thought they'd be in Milwaukee because I thought they were on the Milwaukee bubble, so to speak, last week. And then they performed very, very well in the tournament. Easily could have won it yesterday. It comes down to a couple 50-50 loose balls and two 50-50 whistles in the last 40 seconds. And wouldn't you know it? Oh, Michigan got it to go their way. It's not like we've seen that a dozen times so far this season, so not surprised at all. It's a bummer that Wisconsin can't be in Milwaukee, but I think a little bit too much is being made. It's like, oh, they got to play Thursday early? Well, okay, like maybe a Sunday finalist doesn't need to be one of the first teams to tip on Thursday, granted, but they're not flying to Japan. They're not flying to Hawaii. They're flying to Denver. It's a relatively short flight. Yeah, they got to play at altitude. So does everybody else. And I know Missoula's a little higher in elevation. That's where Montana plays than Madison, granted, but it's not like Missoula's a mile high. They're about 3,000 feet in elevation. I looked it up today. So I don't think it's the biggest deal in the world. So Wisconsin's timing and their travel isn't ideal, but I think their opponent is about as ideal as you could ask for. Montana is not good, right? They played 2 Power 5 schools this year. They got blasted in both of those games, once by Oregon and once by Tennessee. And interestingly enough, Zach Heilprin sent me this about an hour ago. He said a ranking that you should love. If you look at KenPom.com and you look at their luck rating, the number 1 team in the country, and you know what? It's not really close. Montana, a plus 0.186. Have no clue what that means. But the next closest team is 0.147, then 141, 133. Like they're a nice leap above number 2 and number 3. And I wanted to know where the other Big Ten teams shook out in the luck rating. I was looking specifically for Michigan. Oregon is team number 28. They're the highest Big Ten team in the luck rating. And then Michigan, not super far behind. They are 42nd. So Oregon and Michigan are the 2 top teams in the Big Ten in KenPom's luck rating. The next closest team, I believe, is Minnesota, and they're a ways down there. So it's interesting how luck doesn't always correlate with overall record. I thought Oregon, if anything, got unlucky sometimes this year. Like I thought they were a better team than their record showed. I also think they got quite lucky against Wisconsin. Like if we're just looking at that game in an individual sample, it's like, okay, so they failed to inbound the ball 3 times late and missed free throws. And like, okay, there's some good luck for Oregon. But I thought Oregon was probably a little bit better of a team than they showed at times. So I don't know. I don't want to minimize or maximize luck rating, although I did feel like, my God, yesterday was a rerun. I got a lot of deja vu watching Michigan because I've been watching Michigan State, Illinois, Maryland, Wisconsin. Those are the teams in the Big Ten that I've been kind of keyed in on. I watched Purdue for a week leading into their last game with Wisconsin and then the week leading out, and I felt like I had a pretty good beat on Purdue. Like Braden Smith is terrific. If he's your best and only offensive player, you're a little bit limited. Trey Kaufman-Renn is excellent. He's a little undersized, and if he's in foul trouble, you can be in a tough spot. They were a little bit of a 2-man show, and that put a hard ceiling on them on offense, and I thought that was clear, the way that they lost a couple of games following Wisconsin beating them at Mackey. But I thought I had a good read on Purdue, so I started watching a lot more Michigan State, Maryland. I think if there's a team in this tournament, I saw our friend Ben Kenny tweeting about them today. I think Maryland... They were certainly the hottest team coming into the conference tournament. And my God, if they had just stopped ball against Michigan, like they would have been playing yesterday. And I don't know how that game would have gone. I just don't know. I'm not going to sit here and say, well, they would have beat Wisconsin or Wisconsin would have beat Maryland. I don't know. I think most teams would have beaten Wisconsin. Oh, I tell you what I do know? To I want to say a certain level of certainty, but that's repetitive. So I was trying to find another way to say it. I'll tell you what I do know to a certain level of certainty is that Maryland would have beat Wisconsin by a lot more than 5 or 6 points yesterday. If Wisconsin played that way against Maryland yesterday, I think Maryland's running them out of the gym because they have been white hot and they're just an outstanding team. And I'm looking at their draw. So they got to beat Grand Canyon. Then they'll pull the winner of Memphis, Colorado State. And then after that, they could potentially, they could see Florida in the Sweet 16. And I know there have been some, and I saw earlier, and maybe I should try to play this audio. Maybe I'll do it next segment because I'll pull it up over the break. I think if there's one team in this tournament that is at least comparable to UConn the last couple of years, where it's like that team's the best team with a bullet, they should win, I think it's maybe Florida, especially because Auburn has had some injuries and certain other teams have had injuries. Like Florida might be the wagon. I think Maryland, and obviously it's a bracket and it's impossible to predict, I would put Maryland straight to the Sweet 16 against Florida. And then I think that's going to be a hell of a game in the round of 16. If they're able to, get past Grand Canyon and Memphis and whoever, like it's easy to take a pen and say, yep, I'm confident that this team's going to advance. I'm confident in this team's going to advance. But then it doesn't happen. That's why it's called March Madness. And that's why these brackets are so difficult to do. And that's why most brackets are busted within the first 2 hours of, the thing getting started on the opening Thursday of the round of 64. But I think Michigan, to go back to yesterday's game, that was a perfect example of why, in my opinion, Michigan has experienced so much one-score luck this season. They hit the buzzer beater. Who they hit the buzzer beater over? Rutgers, I think, in the rack. Like they just hit a prayer at the buzzer and they win on a walk-off. Like that's a win that they shouldn't have had. And then against Maryland on Saturday, just stop ball. That's elementary school. That's middle school level basketball. Step up and stop ball. You can't just give the guy a head of steam and a straight path at the rim. Even if he needs to go offhand or even if he needs to shoot a floater, like stop ball. Force a kick out three. Anything's better than even a contested layup. And then if you foul, like he could have gone to the free throw line too. So I don't think Michigan deserved to win that game. And then yesterday, the game is tied because Wisconsin is having one of their worst shooting performances of the season. They're playing their fourth game in 4 days. The legs are obviously dead. And the game is right there, tied with a minute left. And what happens? Michigan has a possession extended 3 times because the ball bounces their way 3 times. 1 time in a possession is good luck. 3 times is, well, it's 2024, 2025 Michigan basketball. That's what it is. And then it's not like someone hits a big shot. It's not like someone drills a dagger like Sam Decker at the top of the key against Kentucky in 2015. What is it? Big Head Golden. What's his first name? Matt Golden. It's Danny Wolf. And then what the hell is that guy's name? Oh, Vlad Golden. Yeah, of course. Friggin' Russian op. It's the second Moscow mentioned in the show. He gets a 50-50 whistle on Steven Crowell. And then on the other end, Crowell doesn't get the 50-50 whistle. Like Michigan gets the bounce of the ball 3 times, and then they get a 50-50 whistle that isn't given on the other end. And I'm not saying that the refs gave it to Michigan. I'm not saying they screwed up the review. I don't even have a problem with the review. You got to get that call right. It's a tie game. Points are a premium with less than a minute to go to decide the conference championship. Like, yeah, you got to review those plays. But of course, all 3 go to Michigan, and then they get the 50-50 call, and then the refs swallow their whistle on the other end on a very similar play. Like, that's Michigan basketball. And that's why I've been preying on their downfall, and I will continue to do so even on Thursday when their matchup against, when they eventually, who are they going to play? San Diego. That's right. Another little nook of the bracket that I'm very interested in watching. We have a Marquette, New Mexico, and a Michigan State Bryant. I would love in the round of 32 a Tom Izzo versus Shaka Smart, Michigan State Marquette. Love, love, love. I want that to the point where I'll actually probably cheer for Marquette in their opening round. Well, probably not. But if they win, I won't be angry. Put it that way. Because I would love to see Marquette, Michigan State. Wisconsin playing Montana. We talked about that draw a little bit. I don't think they got jobbed. I think there are pros and cons to who they're playing and when they're playing them and where they're playing them. It's a little bit closer to BYU and to Missoula than it is to Madison. Okay. They're not playing on the moon. They're not flying to Hawaii. They're not flying to Seattle. It's Denver, which is actually, most people would be surprised. You look at a map. I'm always surprised at how far south Denver is. I always think it's more north. I always think it's a more northerly city. It's not. It's actually pretty far south. Like you could drive to Arizona, which borders Mexico. Part of that is all the states in the West are much larger from a square mileage perspective than you'd think. We've veered into a geography conversation. We don't need to keep that going. But I think Wisconsin's draw. It sucks they're not in Milwaukee. It sucks that they got to play early as a Sunday finalist. They also have just about the most manageable possible opponent. Okay. So you throw that all together, that's a real solid opening round matchup with some real pros and cons. That's how the tournament's supposed to be. Yes, BYU would be a challenging opponent in round 2, but you're playing them to go to the Sweet 16. That's not supposed to be a cupcake. It's not supposed to be a bye game. Like, that's a legitimate game with a legitimate prize if you win, advancing to the second weekend in the Sweet 16. So we can continue to talk about this. I will get to your texts as well. Coming up next, 608-321-1670. Oh, and by the way, the Monday mailbag coming up in about a half hour. And today, the Monday mailbag, I want it to be bigger and fuller than ever before because we're not able to take calls. So today, more than any day, I think the Monday mailbag coming up at 5:50. Let's fill that thing. Let's fill that all the way up. Let's pack it. Loaded. 608-321-1670 to text and send your mailbag questions to grantbills21@gmail.com.
This is the Wisco Sports Show with Grant Bills on the Wisconsin Sports Zone Radio Network.
The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 3 minutes. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 2 minutes. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 1 minute. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 30 seconds.
I think we really got our bite back defensively. You know, a week ago against Penn State, I thought we were not anywhere near where we needed to be defensively. And these 4 games, we got it back. We guarded really well. And that has to be a mainstay, because then it puts you in a game where, you know, we have a tie game with 45 seconds to go here. So even when you're not putting the ball in the basket at the rate that maybe you're accustomed to, the defensive ability of this group, you know, we leaned in that today heavily because we had to. And that's where that's been a growth here over the last 60 days. But I thought these 4 games we really guarded pretty well.
asked Greg Gard after yesterday's game, and I think he's right. And I remember at the beginning of the year when it became clear, especially around that Arizona game, that this team can score. And you had pieces being written by Jesse Temple and the like about how the staff was rebuilt and their day-to-day was rebuilt and everything was reorganized and redesigned to be more focused on offense and to feel like an NBA program at the college level, right? Remember these stories? We talked about this with Jesse, and I've often referenced back to these stories throughout the year because, I mean, like Greg Gard did it. He did a good job. It worked, right? He did it successfully. So we've kind of gone back to those early season stories about, this change to this part of the routine and, this renewed focus on X, Y, Z and ABC, and it's been borne out in results this year. The proof has been in the pudding, right? And I think the defense has been much more of a work in progress throughout the year. The offense has been there, right? This is a very gifted offensive team, a very deep offensive team, a team that's naturally skilled to score the basketball, really unlike most Badger teams in my lifetime. But the defense has been a little bit more of a work in progress, especially with transfers, right? And we talked about this with Zach last week, immediately after the Northwestern game, I believe. This is when we talked about that the defense is more a product of chemistry and familiarity, and that takes time, especially when you're bringing in John Tonje and welcoming Xavier Amos. And here, Blackwell's now handling the ball more because Chucky Hepburn's gone and AJ Storr isn't here. But now you got to learn, all of the sudden Carter Gilmore's playing a lot more. These guys, some of them have been in the program, but even the guys who've been in the program for extended periods of time are playing new roles, or they're playing the same role next to someone completely new and completely different, or someone familiar, but playing a different role. So the defense has taken a little bit more time. I thought they defended at a really high level throughout the weekend, starting in half number 2 against Northwestern. I think you could notice a real commitment and a real investment on the defensive end right out of halftime, maybe even a little bit before halftime. It wasn't there at the beginning of the game on Thursday, but it became apparent very quickly, especially in half number 2. That carried over to UCLA on Friday. I think it definitely carried over against Michigan State. Michigan State, the best way to play defense against Michigan State is to play detail-oriented, focused, clean offense. You know what I mean? The best way to play defense against Michigan State is don't let them get out and run, right? Focus and run clean, concise offense, not sloppy offense, not turnover-prone offense, getting good shots that even if they don't go in, right? We're not heaving deep threes that are more likely to give Michigan State an opportunity to get out on a long rebound and run, right? I don't want you crashing underneath the basket stanchion on a layup and then sliding into the crowd, preventing you from getting back on defense. The best way to play defense against Michigan is to just play really clean offense. You don't necessarily need to score 100, but you need to play offense and score the ball and handle the ball in a way that really limits them from getting out to run. Because if you get Michigan State in the half court, a lot of it's just going to take care of itself. And Izzo's been very clear about that. It's not the most talented team he's ever had. They're well coached, they're experienced, they're tough. They're all of the things you expect Michigan State to be, but they're not gifted. Neither's Michigan. Right? Michigan's a lot of the same. You saw that yesterday. It's not a gifted team. They present size problems, but I thought Crowell, Gilmore, and Winter as a collective, as a group of bigs, controlled the boards and controlled the paint as good as I've ever seen them do this season, and maybe even back further, because that's not a matchup. You go, Steven Crowell will hold his own, and Steven Crowell will get Michigan's bigs, whether it be Golden or Wolf, to play on his terms. Michigan did not get second chance shots yesterday, and it's not because they made all their shots. They didn't. Michigan shot like hell too. Now, there were more defensive rebounds to be had both ways because neither team was shooting the ball well. But I thought the positioning and, again, the focus and attention to detail from Crowell and Gilmore and Winter, being in the right place at the right time, being positioned, communicating with someone else to corral loose balls. I thought they did such an exceptional job. And it's a bummer yesterday that some shots couldn't fall, because I think if Wisconsin had made 3 more threes yesterday, I'd get to lead the show tonight talking about how, you know what, Steven Crowell, you crazy redhead, you showed up and you played the exact type of game that was needed against that type of opponent. And we don't really get to have that conversation today because they lost. I still think it's worth talking about even after a loss. But I think, if anything else, it also, it's an extension of that comment that you just heard from Greg Gard about the defense. I want to play that one more time, right? They committed to defense. They really applied themselves on defense. But I think like that also applies to rebounding, like the focus and the locked in-ness that their bigs especially had on offense. Like that was a big part of it too, almost the defensive part of the offensive side of the ball.
You know, a week ago against Penn State, I thought we were not anywhere near where we needed to be defensively. And these 4 games, we got it back. We guarded really well. And that has to be a mainstay, because then it puts you in a game where, you know, we have a tie game with 45 seconds to go here. So even when you're not putting the ball in the basket at the rate that maybe you're accustomed to, the defensive ability of this group, you know, we leaned in that today heavily because we had to. And that's where that's been a growth here over the last 60 days. But these 4 games, we really guarded pretty well.
I hate this trope, but I'll do it. If you would have told me on Sunday morning that John Tonje was going to make 1 field goal from the floor, that Nolan Winter and Steven Crowell could combine for less than 10 points, and Wisconsin's bench as a whole would score 5, I just said, it's not even close. Like they're not winning that game. Now they didn't win, but it was tied with 40 seconds left. And I think the penultimate possession, both for Michigan and then for Wisconsin, was a product of some batted ball luck and then some officiating luck. And officiating luck is part of the game. I'm not saying the refs made a bad call to put Golden on the line, and I'm not saying they made a bad call not putting Crowell on the line on the subsequent possession. Those were 2 50-50 calls. The game is made up, a basketball game is made up of 50-50 calls. It's just so perfect and it's so on the nose that the 50-50 call goes the way of Michigan, doesn't go the way of Wisconsin, and it all takes place immediately after 3 loose balls all fall the way of Michigan. Like that is the story of the 2024-2025 Michigan Wolverines. It drives me nuts. I wanted that matchup just like I wanted Michigan State, and I would have felt very good about myself. I would have felt proven very correct about the quality of both of the Michigan teams as it relates to Wisconsin. But, you know, they come up a possession or two, really just a made shot or two short yesterday down the stretch. I don't know. Should I be yelling and kicking and screaming that Wisconsin didn't make a more concerted effort to get to the rim yesterday? You know what I mean? Like, should I be mad that they didn't stop shooting threes, that they should have done something else? Like, is that my role today? Should I be complaining more and talking more about that? I don't know. I kind of think they took natural shots within the flow of the offense. I don't need deep threes with 12 seconds left on the shot clock. I saw Vagabond John tweeting about this yesterday. Like something that I notice on the broadcast, and maybe this is something that you notice, or maybe this is just me, but anytime the shot clock would get down to like 7 or 8, you have Raftery or Ian Eagle going like, and they're taking it way down deep in the shot clock. 8 seconds is so long. You can do so much in 8 seconds. So I think, you know, some things that were being said on the broadcast were actually quite reminiscent of the way that the Badgers were operating offensively, in that like they would get down below 10 seconds on the shot clock. It's like, oh, time to take a deep contested 3. Like, no, 8 seconds. You can run multiple actions in 8 seconds. You can make multiple passes. You can put the ball on the boards, pick it up and pass it again. Like, it's not guaranteed that you're going to get an awesome shot, but 7 or 8 seconds, that's so long. And I thought the commentary from the broadcasters and then the play of the Badgers, like, I just thought they were a little bit needy to get off a shot when they didn't need to be. I don't mind Wisconsin taking that many threes against Michigan, because I think that's how you beat Michigan. And you don't necessarily need to make 15 or 16 of them to beat Michigan. Now, you need to make 1 or 2 more than they did. But Wisconsin only, like, what did they hit? Did they hit 7 of them? 8 of them? Yeah, they hit 7. Like, if they hit 9 threes, they win yesterday. And that's the way to attack Michigan. That's where they're vulnerable. But I thought some of the threes, we don't need to take that one. You can work for a better one. You can work for, like, Tonje does not need to. Tonje makes 2 free throws and then heat checks from right in front of the logo. Like, who's that for in this game? Like, I just hate heat checks on principle, but I especially hate heat checks if you're cold. You know what I mean? Like, Tonje started getting to the line. Let's get into the lanes, take a little runner, take a little floater from the free throw line or from the elbow extended. Like, I don't need the catapult threes from way downtown. I'm not mad that they shot 43s against Michigan, because that's how you beat Michigan. That's where they're vulnerable. I would have liked the ball to touch the paint a little bit more, and I would have liked them to milk the shot clock a little bit more on some possessions. But by and large, I chalk that up to shooting luck. And of course, the luck goes against the team playing against Michigan because that's been the story of their season. I'll stop whining about that. Well, I'll stop whining about that until we get back from this break. 608-321-1670. Send me your texts on the Badgers. We could talk Packers for a couple minutes. And Aaron Rodgers still does not have a team. We'll talk a little bit about the NFL when we come back. And then the Monday mailbag at 5:50. Send me your questions or your comments or your concerns. GrantBills21@gmail.com. The Wisco Sports Show back after this.
This is the Wisco Sports Show with Grant Bills on the Wisconsin Sports Zone Radio Network.
The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 5 minutes. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 4 minutes. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 3 minutes. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 2 minutes. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 1 minute. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 30 seconds.
Four games in 4 days. I mean, Max and John Blackwell, you guys have been through that before, but do you feel like fatigue potentially played a factor today? And if so, kind of how tough is it to do what you guys did today, play 4 games in 4 days and have a game like this where it's as physical as it was?
John Blackwell, we'll begin with you.
I think we're well conditioned. I don't think the fatigue was the issue. I think we played our hearts out. I think we gave it everything we got. Just came up short. Yeah.
Max.
I thought we played. Yeah. I mean, I don't think our conditioning had anything to do with it. Just not enough shots went in.
John Donji.
Yeah, I'm not looking for any excuses. I think just, kind of like what I said, shots just didn't fall today.
Question and 3 answers from 3 different Badgers after yesterday's game. If you watch the video, the post-game presser, and I think you can hear this in the sound too, but if you watch it, you'll notice this to, I think, even a bigger degree. Those guys were crushed yesterday. That was a team that was down bad after that loss. That was a game they wanted. So it'll be on Greg Gard, I suppose, over the next couple of days to shake that loss out. You got to clear those cobwebs out because you got a date with Montana and Denver early on Thursday. And then if you win that game, they're going to have to fill it up against BYU. Talk about 2 teams that can score when they're playing their best version of basketball. And I think Wisconsin, when they don't have to play 4 games in 4 days, probably be a little bit more likely to make more jump shots. I don't know that to be certain. I would just bet on it. Again, these are just a lot of bets. We make a lot of assumptions, or we think, one thing or another. 608-321-1670. If you have any final thoughts on the Badgers, we've mostly talked about the Badgers the whole time. I got a Packers thought, an NFL thought or 2 before we take our final break, and then we will get to the Monday mailbag. And you could submit your question. I prefer them to not be sports related, just because then it's like one segment a week where it's like kind of wacky, zany, do something other than sports. It can be sports related, but like I'm not looking, the questions coming into the mailbag today, I'm not looking for, what do you think the Badgers need to do against Montana on Thursday? Like, we've been talking about that for the last hour 45. You know what I mean? Nick speaking, let's get the ball rolling on some NFL takes. Nick on the live stream on YouTube comments. Grant, I'm honestly surprised at this point that the Vikings and or Rodgers haven't made a decision. It's fine. It's not our problem. I'm just a little surprised is all. So we had Matt Caller on Bill's show earlier today, Purple Insider. He's been on the show a bunch. He's great. About a week ago or so, I guess, yeah, legal tampering was a week ago today. I asked around to Vikings people. Matthew was one of them. Like, I'm seeing tweets from Mike Silver, and we're getting these little reports at The Athletic from Diana Rossini that, there are some conversations happening at TCO Performance Center or whatever, the Vikings building up there. And was it off 494 or 694? I can never remember which one goes north of the cities. Beside the point. There's some conversations going on. And let me tell you what, Kevin O'Connell's voice carries more weight than everybody else. And a week ago, I thought, and confirmed by asking around to a degree, that was some national people who have known Rodgers people. His agency, Mike Silver, goes all the way back to Cal with Rodgers. It's like, hey, put it out there a little bit that I'm interested in Minnesota, and put it out there, make it seem like, Minnesota, they're mulling it. They're thinking about it, which is an easy thing to lie about. You know what I mean? Because until someone at that building in Minnesota comes out and says, we're not interested, well, then, it's not really unfair. It's not really a lie to say they're talking about it. They probably are. You know what I mean? The fact that we're here a week later on Monday, I'm not totally shocked that Rodgers hasn't decided where he wants to play, because to be honest, I don't know that anything Rodgers would do could shock me anymore. Like, Rodgers could be a free agent until August and then announce he wants to play. And I'll be like, all right, yeah, that's all right. That's not shocking. Like, that wouldn't surprise me. You know what I mean? I am a little surprised that we've heard nothing from the Vikings, which I guess we can only then assume that they're at least kicking it around, that they haven't closed that door. Because if they've closed that door, they would tell us, or they would make it apparent by signing Jameis Winston or, whoever, fill in the blank backup quarterback. And they let Daniel Jones walk. I thought Daniel Jones would have been the perfect backup, slash veteran, I suppose, to compete and to push JJ McCarthy in camp. He probably wants to go to Indy because he feels like he's got a better chance to play. I don't know. I don't think that's an unfair conclusion to draw. Charch was on with Bill on Friday and basically said, well, the fact that Daniel Jones didn't want to stay in Minneapolis means that JJ McCarthy must be pretty good and he doesn't think he has a chance to play over JJ McCarthy. That's probably how I'd view it as a fan too. I think that's a little bit bigger of a leap. I think that's a little, maybe, some purple and gold colored glasses, but look at me. I'm, Packers fan. I do the same thing. So I'm not surprised that Aaron Rodgers has not decided yet, because I don't think Rodgers could do anything that would surprise me at this point. I'm a little surprised that all has been quiet on the Vikings front, and maybe they're deliberating. Maybe they're just trying to hammer out a contract with a potential available backup or veteran, right? And that's why they're focused on that. And then when that signing or that news, that addition becomes public, we can take that as messaging that they're out on Rodgers. I don't know. Tyler in Massachusetts says Rodgers is going to announce his free agency decision on Thursday, just before the tip of the NCAA to grab attention. Look, everyone says that Rodgers, loves being the center of attention. He loves people talking about him. I think on some level that has to be true. Who among us doesn't like to be the center of attention from time to time? I don't think Rodgers continuing free agency this week is making him the center of attention. I think there's plenty of other things going on. I think Schefter whining on ESPN Milwaukee that he's got to follow Aaron Rodgers around. Like, okay, yeah, it's the center of attention if you make it the center of attention, which Schefter didn't need to do. And, people are on, Sports Center and ESPN like, why can't he just decide? Okay, well, if you're going to lose your mind over it, then I guess Rodgers is the center of attention. I think Rodgers has a couple really good choices. I think Pittsburgh is a really good choice. Minnesota would be an excellent choice. The jury is just out on whether or not they want him. I think Pittsburgh, and we talked about this late last week. I talked about this with Andy and Perry on Pack-A-Day last night too. I think Pittsburgh is a slam dunk of a decision for Rodgers, considering what we thought his options would be a month ago. You know what I mean? At Super Bowl week or at the end of the season. It doesn't necessarily have to be like Radio Row week, but just like as the NFL season was winding down and it was clear that Rodgers probably wasn't going to be back with the Jets and he wanted to keep playing, and we start kicking around potential opportunities. It was like, well, would he go to the Titans? Like, would he go to the Raiders? Like, these are teams that aren't going to give him a chance to contend, most likely. Back then, if I would have known that Pittsburgh would be open to having him, I would have said, there's your spot. And since then, they acquired DK Metcalf. So that's become an even more desirable location. So I don't blame Rodgers for being interested and wanting to make sure that, Minnesota, you sure you don't want me? Like, I don't blame him for that. I think Pittsburgh is just about the best possible situation that we could have expected to be available to Rodgers a month or two ago. You know what I mean? The Giants, I would avoid them like the plague. The only reason that their coach and general manager are still there is John Mara is just sick of hiring and firing general managers and coaches. And I think at the end of last year, based on his comments and things that were reported and said, it's like, I think John Mara and most people probably agree that Dable and Shane should be fired, but he just doesn't want to be the owner that keeps firing coaches. So if Rodgers goes to the Giants, they probably stink. They're near the bottom of the division. Coach and general manager get fired. The next regime wants to move off from Rodgers. And now Rodgers, since leaving Green Bay, would have missed 1 year with an Achilles injury. The next year gets his coach and general manager fired. And then the year after that goes somewhere else and then gets that coach and general manager fired. And I wouldn't blame Rodgers for that. I don't blame Rodgers for Woody Johnson being a nutbag firing Robert Saleh a month into the year. And I don't blame Aaron Rodgers for Joe Douglas and Joe Douglas's family for ostracizing, or not Joe Douglas, but Woody Johnson, ostracizing Joe Douglas and basically neutering him of all power to the point where he's like just ready to leave. Like, that's not Rodgers' fault, but that's how it will be remembered. Coach got fired, general manager got fired. And I think if he goes to the Giants, the same thing will happen. Like, dude, just go to the Steelers. Unless, of course, the Vikings want you. But I really think at this point, we're waiting on the Vikings. I don't think we're waiting on Rodgers anymore. I think we're waiting on the Vikings. Let's take a break. 3 minutes. We'll come back with the Monday mailbag. Send your questions to my Gmail, grantbills21@gmail.com. I will answer them to wrap up the show next.
This is the Wisco Sports Show with Grant Bills on the Wisconsin Sports Zone Radio Network.
The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 3 minutes. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 2 minutes. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 1 minute. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 30 seconds.
It's 5:50 or shortly after 5:50 on Monday. This is the time of the week where we have a little fun, get away from sports, talk about real life things. You submit your questions. I answer them. grantbills21@gmail.com. I ask you to send them to that email because then they're all in one place and I don't have to hunt on the text line and then hunt in the comments. Just send them all to my email, please. We begin with Teacher Tom, who I believe listens somewhere in Milwaukee. He says, how long does it take for your apartment, or how long does it take for the water in your apartment to get hot? You recently said that you turn the shower on and then sit down and check your phone until the water is hot enough. Teacher Tom. Well, it doesn't take that long. I don't know. That's my routine. Start the water, sit down on the toilet, curate a Spotify playlist, a queue, find a YouTube video. I don't know, 2 minutes. Are you shower watching me? Or are you water watching me, Teacher Tom? Not that long. I take my time. It's my me time at the end of the day. Tyler in Mass says, where does St. Patrick's Day fall in your holiday rankings? So this is a good one. I just think Thanksgiving is number one with a bullet. And that's not to criticize any other holidays. It's just there's a ton of food and it's a 4-day weekend and there's football on. And like if you're into the deer hunting thing, you also have that. Like it's just got all of it. And then there's college football on. And it's not just like I don't need sports in my holiday, but it's great because if you're getting together with family, it's nice to have something to be able to put on. You know, a nice touch point for conversation or small talk. Like Thanksgiving is just the balls. So Thanksgiving is one. I think Christmas then has to be two. I don't know. I just think that's an objective way to view holidays. Now, then, if you're asking for my personal tastes outside of those two holidays, which I think are just the two best, some sneaky holidays that I don't think get enough run. I think Memorial Day is just an outstanding weekend. And I understand that there's a deeper meaning behind that day. And we remember those who have died, of course. But the 3-day weekend to start and end the summer, outstanding, especially if you are around a lake or a tiki bar setting. Like those 2 weekends are just the balls. Now, 4th of July is great too. It's like those 2 weekends, except on steroids. Oktoberfest is pretty great too. That's not, I would take all of those over St. Patrick's Day. You could take or leave St. Patrick's Day. I don't need a reason to I'll just get really drunk. Like if I just want to drink, I'll just drink. I don't need a holiday. Tony in Texas says, green beer on St. Patrick's Day, drink or stink. I'll have a green beer. This is a little food coloring. No big deal. Yeah, give me a green beer. Drink, Tony. Drink. Clemhead Mike says, are you officiating your friend's wedding? We want pics. So this is not my friend. It's actually my significant other's very close friend. No, I am not officiating this wedding. I am officiating one in May. The problem is you officiate one wedding and you don't blow it, then you're on the list for other people. So I feel like I will probably officiate some weddings. I don't even go to the mailbox anymore. And this is bad because sometimes you're sent important things in the mail. But I feel a little bit like, what's his name? Dursley? What are the Petunia and what's Harry Potter's dad's name or stepdad's name? Adopted father's name? I can't remember. Like in the Sorcerer's Stone when he keeps going to the mailbox and he just hates it because there's so much mail. Every time I go to the mailbox, I have another wedding invite. Like I have too many weddings. Half of my weekends in 2025 they're spoken for. I have to go to a wedding. In the spirit of continuing the wedding conversation, Josh Menominee says, are you pro or con destination wedding? What is your ideal location for a future wedding? This is a good one. I don't think I'm pro or con destination wedding. I think there are pros and cons to a destination wedding, the same way that there are pros and cons to any wedding with any amount of people at any type of venue. I'm not anti destination wedding. I will say that if you're going to do a destination wedding, do it somewhere near a major airport. Like my significant other went to a wedding this summer. It was in Montana. Great. Excellent. It's beautiful. I would love to go to a wedding in Montana. The problem is it was in a spot, I believe it was in Red Lodge. If you're getting married in Montana and you're asking people to go out there, look, get married where you want. It's your wedding. I'm not telling you you're doing it right or wrong. But if you're doing a destination wedding, it needs to be somewhere preferably. It doesn't need to, again, it's not my wedding. But like, don't make me fly into an airport and then rent a car and also drive a long way. You know what I mean? Like Red Lodge is it's like hours outside of Billings. No one flies into Billings, but even if you do, you still have to rent a car. You know what I mean? Like I will travel for a wedding. If that's the wedding that you want to have, it's your day. You are inviting me. That's fine. But don't make me fly and then also rent a car and then try to a little bit of convenience. You know what I mean? So people get married in Aspen and it costs an arm and a leg to fly into Aspen. So she's usually flying to Denver and then you drive 4 hours to Aspen. Like that's just, it's too much. So I'm not anti-destination wedding. I think there are pros and cons, but I think there's some mindfulness and some details that go a long way. When you're planning a wedding, you don't have to pay attention to this. It's your wedding. Do whatever you want. People will come or they won't come. Celebrate your day the way you want to celebrate it. Have a great rest of the week. Go Badgers. I'll be back on Monday. Sorry, I got to go to a wedding to ring in these folks' love. So I'll talk to you a week from tonight. Have a great week.